Welcome to Empowered the Podcast. I'm Linda Brand, your host, and I'm here to take you on a journey of growth, healing, and self-discovery. On this podcast, we explore what it means to truly step into your power and create a life you love living. Every episode brings you transformational stories, inspiring interviews, and actionable insights on health, wellness, and mindset. Because let's face it, without our health, we have nothing. I'm joined by coaches, authors, healers, and extraordinary guests sharing their wisdom to help you become the best version of yourself. And you'll also hear from me in solo episodes, diving deep into topics that matter most on the journey to empowerment. So if you're ready to break free, grow, and ignite your potential, you're in the right place. Let's get empowered together. Hello, and welcome to Empowered the Podcast. I am so excited for today's guest. She is a medical Qigong-focused energy medicine practitioner, and her name is Kay, and she has created the first medical Qigong recovery program for narcissistic abuse survivors. She uses a 5-minute energy reset to help women effortlessly reignite their body, mind, and soul potential. Kay's client, Donna, whose health was devastated by the stress of a narcissistic marriage, was able to use the resets to reverse stage 5 kidney damage in only 90 days, preventing Donna from going on dialysis and empowering her to reclaim her life. This is powerful. Today, Kay is sharing how she was able to discover the one thing that no one's talking about in terms of the recovery from narcissistic abuse. That narcissists damage the 5 energy tanks that rule our physical, emotional, financial, and soul health. Yet when you know how to heal 5 areas, healing becomes effortless and doesn't take years of counseling and being on psychiatric medication. Kay's journey began in 2019 when she was divorced from a narcissistic man who dragged her through a nearly year-long court battle that almost destroyed her 15-year energy medicine practice, where she specialized in helping empathetic women make their sensitivities their superpowers, and left her with a shingles outbreak and collapsed immunity system. So today I welcome Kay Hutchinson to the show, and she's going to share with us her expertise on healing from narcissistic abuse. Welcome, Kay, to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me here, Linda. I am thrilled. My body is just alive and excited to be here with you today.
Thank you so much. So tell us a little bit about your background, when this all began. And so you had an energy practice prior to this narcissistic marriage, abusive marriage, right?
Absolutely. I was probably about 14, 15 years into that energy medicine practice. And Linda, while I had worked with both men and women who were in toxic relationships and narcissistic dynamics and helped them successfully extricate themselves and move through and heal, I had never personally encountered a covert narcissist. So that by the time I met my ex, I had not a clue what it was like on a personal level to engage someone that was so very clever at hiding who he really was. And I really believe that experience was there to teach me to have the depth of lived experience and noting what it's like to come through a relationship where the narcissism initially is so very subtle.
Is that what covert means? I've been hearing this lately, covert narcissism.
Absolutely. So, we have a variety of types of narcissism. Overt just means you absolutely know it when you see it. It's the drama king or queen in the life. They have to have the spotlight on them. Everything is about them. It's a lot of ego. We're all very capable of recognizing that. But the covert means more hidden, subtle forms, right? Where they may not necessarily look as if they are egoic, grandiose, and all of those things. They may look like the most kind person who is doting on you, love bombing, putting amazing energy into your world in the very beginning. They can be the most charismatic amazing helpers and partners in the very beginning of the relationship. And certainly that was my case as well. And I'm not one to just fall head over heels. I'm not that person where, oh, I see someone, boom, I'm in love. I am someone that is very thoughtful and moving into relationships. So the fact that I fell for that should tell anyone in the audience that you must absolutely not blame yourself for not having seen what they are in the beginning, because they're very clever at masquerading themselves. And most of us as empathic women, authentic women, we don't move through life thinking about the ways to deceive or manipulate others. So that's not our nature. So we would never see that coming when it is in that package that's so very clever.
And how long were you married to him?
So it was a short marriage of 3 years. We were in the relationship for 5. And I would say that, there were early signs. Looking back, of course, we all have 20/20 hindsight, right? But it was right about a year and a half, halfway into the journey, that I really got some really strong cues. Something wasn't quite right.
And what kind of cues were those?
One of the cues was personality shifts, where before we had really enjoyed like date night out and different types of romantic connections, to suddenly it was almost as if once we got married, I became this other person in his eyes, to where even just going out and having a nice dinner out was something that was like pulling teeth from him. And so that was one of the signs of, something that we cherished together that he knew that also made me really happy. And I thought he really enjoyed it too. Suddenly, he just turned that switch off to where he was not available. He was always busy.
He has you now, so he doesn't have to take, appreciate and nurture, the relationship. And then let's do a quick definition of what a narcissist is for anybody who's listening that perhaps doesn't know what that is.
Absolutely. That's a great idea, Linda. So, we could get very clinical with this, but I like to keep it just really simple. A narcissist is somebody who was extremely wounded when they were a child, such that they don't have a sense of self and they're very empty inside. One might even say that on a soul level, they're disconnected from source. And so they really become energetic vampires. And as we said earlier, it can take the form of where they're very egoic, very into themselves, the drama kings and kings of the world that want the spotlight on them. Or it can take the form where they're very subtle and manipulative, and their goal is to really kind of possess you and draw energy from you to fill in the gaps that they are unable to do for themselves. So we're really, really talking about very wounded individuals.
Okay.
And that's what makes it really dangerous, because they can flip in and out of their trauma bodies. And so we really never know which side of them that we might encounter in a day. It could be a most loving side. It could be a side that is very exciting, adventurous, all of these things, charismatic. But it could also be a very unkind or cruel self. And in some cases, not in my case, physically abusive. Some of my clients have experienced that side of it as well.
Yeah. I feel like that word is used a lot. And I also think that there's a lot of narcissists walking around because there's a lot of wounded people, period. Like we all have wounds, you know what I mean? And I think that you can have some tendencies to narcissists, but you're not a full blown. I feel like, isn't part of being a narcissist someone that doesn't have empathy for others? Would that be one of
Absolutely. That's a hallmark. And when we think about it, when you're a child and you're developing, if you experience trauma at a really profound level, you go numb as a way of protecting yourself. So part of being able to have empathy is to not have that numbness. But if that was there to protect yourself because you were damaged, you grow up without the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and begin to imagine what it might feel like to be on the receiving end of something.
Yeah.
So that's one of, in fact, there are 9 different hallmarks that mark a person or designated someone as clinically narcissistic. And that's certainly one of them, the lack of empathy. And so
Yeah.
therefore they're very drawn to people who have a high level of empathy, women empaths. And we talk a lot about that dynamic between narcissism and women empaths, and know that myth about just because you're a woman empath, you're destined to run across a narcissist. I don't believe that
Yeah.
for a second.
Yeah.
I absolutely know that it is more really the dynamic of them having certain needs energetically that feel better for them when they're in the presence of others who do have a sense of wholeness, whether you label yourself as an empath or not. The more whole, full, and healthy you are, the more that narcissists are kind of drawn to you because they're drawn to that which they do not have.
And then I had a therapist tell me that narcissists love themselves, and I have to believe it's the opposite. And I talked to
Mhm.
another therapist, and that was more advanced and agreed with me that they actually hate themselves.
That's
And
it.
your
They
opinion?
don't have a sense. Yeah, they don't have a sense of self. When
Okay.
we talk about that emptiness that happened, when you get wounded and traumatized as a child, it shatters your self identity, including your confidence, your ability to love yourself.
Right.
And so that facade of self love and, oh, I think I'm it, and all of that is really just that. It's a facade. It's not
Mm,
true self love.
right, right.
So
It's
they are
the
often
front.
drawn
It's
to
like,
people who have good self esteem. They're
mm,
drawn to people who do truly feel good about themselves. But because they are in a space of toxicity, they can often become jealous and
yeah,
begin eroding the other person's self esteem.
I do want to challenge one question, and I know you're spiritual just like me. Do you think, I mean, no disrespect if this comes the wrong way, but we attract who we are in some ways. In some ways, we attract who we are. I'm not saying you are a narcissist, you attracted this man. None of that. I'm just saying that, like you said, I'm curious because I attracted a man, a few years ago when I was when I was someone different. I wasn't who I am today. And,
Mhm.
I talk about him because I'm nothing like that person who attracted him. Right. So it's just interesting. So I was just curious if you think we are magnets we do attract what we are, who we are, or what we believe we're worthy of. One of those.
I go with really the last one with what do we think we're worthy of? Sometimes that's a component,
Yeah.
right? But there's another piece of this too. We attract into our lives that person that is pivotal to teaching us the lessons that we need in that moment. So
Mm,
that's a little deeper than the idea that, I'm mirroring or a person's a mirror of me. Certainly that's always true. Energy is always going to mirror each other in some way, form, or fashion. But if we begin to think about what is the lesson that's been brought to me through this individual.
oh,
And when we put it on that scale, it begins to liberate us from self-judgment. Like,
yeah.
what was it about me at that point that attracted? I spend a lot of time with ladies that are kind of stuck in that loop. And I'm like, let's just leave that alone and look at what did you need to learn from this? And
Yes.
who did it create you to be as
Yeah,
you learned those lessons?
absolutely.
That's exciting to focus on that because then you can look back and go, oh, wow, well, maybe there were some parts of me that had weaker boundaries. And, there's nothing like shoring up your boundaries. When you're in a relationship with a narcissist, you absolutely have, in order to survive it,
Yeah.
develop stronger boundaries. So you
Yeah.
come out of it strong on
And
that side. So maybe that was a lesson, right?
perhaps, yeah. And I agree that every perceived to be negative experience or thing, there's some underlying blessing. And now you found your perfect niche in you're serving all of these women that are victims of narcissistic abuse from all different levels, you said. Some are physical abuse as well. So tell us a little bit about how you help people and who you have a unique reset, 5 minute reset and different things.
Absolutely. And I would say, the very first part of the healing journey is first recognizing that we co create with whoever it is that's coming into our lives. So when we take it into that sphere, we're no longer victims. We are absolutely 100% participators in our experience. Once we know that and we understand and can begin to say, okay, what are the specific areas energetically of myself that got wounded, damaged, or challenged by this experience? And let me then begin with mindfulness techniques, breath, movement, putting our consciousness on how energy flows through those areas, begin to actually restore those areas. Then healing becomes exponentially fast tracked. So that instead of it taking years and years and years of counseling or having to go on psychiatric medications because our anxiety is through the roof, I had one client who had been in psychotherapy for years, had been under the care of a psychiatrist, was on, different types of anti-anxiety medications, still winding up in the ER, Linda, regularly. Because
Oh,
she thought she was having a heart attack, but it was
oh,
really a panic attack. And
right.
so
And the
in
meds
beginning
were
to
clearly
come,
not serving because if
they
she's,
weren't.
it's, the medication, I'm not saying I'm against all medications. I know that there are certain times and places that we need it, but I'm saying that oftentimes you're just, covering, it's a Band-Aid. It's not, it's
Yes,
causing some other symptom in the body. So when you're medicated, you
absolutely.
don't know what's, and it's harming your liver and different things. But anyway, back to what you were saying, I want to talk about the co-creation because to me, what you're saying is these are not victims, right? You're
Right?
saying these people participated and they take full responsibility without self-judgment, but ultimately, so let's go there a little bit because it's we're not victims, we're survivors. We're
That's
survivors.
it.
Yeah.
That is it, exactly. And it is really amazing. Like, even this client that I talked about having the panic attacks, there was a part of her that said, I'm a victim of this. Right. And so, as long as she held that belief and the energy around that belief, she continued to have the panic attacks. But once she began to see, oh, wow, I co created this, and therefore I am also capable of creating something entirely different in my life. Let me start to examine those five energetic areas, and we map those to the five elements that are in Chinese energy medicine classically, and begin working with breath work and resets. Qigong is a form of movement that's similar to Tai Chi, regulating these areas of myself. And so within 90 days, after years of struggling, she was able to get off of all of those medications. And unlike you, I'm complementary. Sometimes we need pharmaceuticals from doctors. I'm a big believer in complementary. But if we're not dealing with the energetic imbalance underneath that, we end up still suffering. So she was able to get off of all of that.
Mm.
And then she shocked me, Linda. She went out and got training as a flight attendant for one of the top airlines in the country. Now, flight attendant, that is one of the most stressful jobs in the travel industry, but this had been a lifelong dream. So at the age of 50, she got out there, she made it through the training,
Oh,
she got hired, she got awards for being the best customer service rep for this company. And
oh,
so she's out there flying the friendly skies where previously she had been so debilitated by
mm,
anxiety that she wasn't even able to work. She
that's
was on
incredible.
governmental support.
That's
So,
incredible.
when we could take charge and say we have the power to heal these areas that narcissists destroy, and when we're able to consciously connect with what each of those five areas are and use resets in a very specific way, there is no limit to
Oh,
what a woman can do in her recovery.
that's
Absolutely none.
that's incredible. So for you and your personal experience, what happened? How did it all go down with your 3-year marriage? Like you were together for 5 and you came out of there and you had been destroyed in all the 5 areas from this man?
Absolutely. Definitely. And Linda, it was a subtle thing. It wasn't like, you know, it was very obvious that each area was being depleted. And I'll give you an example of that. So the water element tank is all about our vital energy. How much energy do we have in a day? It's our kidneys, our adrenals. How much clarity does our brain have? And so I had always been someone that had just everybody nicknamed me Tigger because I always have this great amount of natural energy. And what I began to notice in that relationship is gradually I just began to get tired, where at the end of the day, I was just tanked, where that wasn't my reality before. I was someone that would actually end the day with higher level than I began because I would regulate myself so well. And I was immersed in things that I was passionate about and had amazing people around me. And so there was this exchange of their energy that was mutually feeding each other. But when I was around him, by the time the day ended, it was so one-sided where so much was being pulled from me, and I was allowing that I would end the day just totally exhausted. And that took its toll on my adrenals and my kidneys. And so this vibrancy that I was actually known for, even on a branding level, began to diminish to where even clients began to notice that I was showing up really not quite the bright light and vibrant person that they were accustomed to.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing that started to happen. And as I said, it was gradual. The next thing that I noticed, my nervous system was constantly on edge. I was hypervigilant. I couldn't put my finger on why my body felt like this all the time. That's the wood tank that rules our nervous system. Nervous system was on high alert because because our bodies never lie. Body was saying, danger, danger, danger. And then he would do something incredibly loving and extravagant in terms of attention. And I'd be like, oh, well, maybe it's something else that's making me feel, that hypervigilant. It couldn't possibly be the relationship. My sweetie couldn't possibly be the source of me feeling like this all the time, right? So I started to deny it. And of course, at times when I actually did confront it, he would deny it as well. So there was a lot of gaslighting, just the denial of reality. So with the nervous system being like that, guess what? When you have shingles, shingles is one of the viruses that really tremendously affects the nervous system, right? It travels up the spine, it manifests, affects the nerve endings. So you get lesions and you get this horrific pain. That's what shingles is. So that's what happened to me, is as my immunity dropped from all of the stress, and as my nervous system did this 24/7 for those 3 years that we were intimately living together as a married couple, I ended that journey with shingles that traveled all the way up my spine, all the way across my face. And I was someone that was doing keynote presentations. I was very visible, and I had these tracks along my face. The pain was so extreme that when I went to my medical doctor, they were like, why aren't you on like gabapentin and these heavy duty painkillers? Because you have a level of outbreak that we can't even understand how you're not walking around and just screaming at the top of your lungs.
Wow.
And that was because I'm a master herbalist, so I was able to kind of treat, and I was getting acupuncture and things from Chinese energy medicine that were quelling the levels of pain, so I'm still able to function. But yeah, for years I had these track marks across, and it was really terrible. So across, that's just 2 of the 5 tanks that were devastated, and how it showed up for me, right? And other people, I think I've seen in my practice, again, the exhaustion seems to be pretty universal with the water tank depletion, and also the hypervigilance, insomnia, feeling nervous and jittery where, they take a cup of coffee and it's like they're off the roof, and then anxiety is flowing. So those 2 tanks tend to be the most common ones that are damaged. And there were other things that happened, digestive issues. That's the earth tank. I had this bloating, Linda. I felt like, oh my gosh, I look like I'm 9 months pregnant. There was this bloating that just would not go away.
Yeah, the body keeps score. The body keeps score, and the body is a messenger. The body is a messenger. I love that. That you, I mean, I don't love that you went through all that, but the body was just screaming to you, get out, right?
Get out.
And so you covered 3. What are the other 2? Just so we know what you're talking.
Yeah. So the other 2 had to do with the metal element, which is, and I kind of mentioned that metal element tank rules our immunity. And so it wasn't only just that my immunity dropped and therefore the shingles virus became active, right? But there was another component that happened is, in my family, we have a tendency towards autoimmune mediated thyroid disease. And though I had never tested positive on any level, suddenly my thyroid was raging with Graves' disease. And so I had to find a way to really regulate that as well. And metal element is interesting because it governs the sense of safety that we have, Linda. it is our natural shielding. Some people talk about the aura and the energetic aura. We have a natural ability to protect ourselves when we are well regulated with that tank. But when we live with someone where the constant state is the feeling of not being safe, it's like our shielding, our immunity, everything that's holding us and containing us well begins to melt. So I experienced that as well on that physical autoimmune level. And then last was the level of the fire element tank, which has everything to do with our hearts, our passion, our intimate energies, our ability to connect from this really deep place with others on a social level. Again, something that I was really known for. I love people, even though I'm an introvert, I love connecting with people extremely deeply. And I found myself just not having the social energies, not feeling the desire to have that deeper engagement. And friends saw me kind of like pulling away. And there was social isolation, which also often happens when there's narcissistic abuse. The abuser isolates you away from your tribe because, one, they're jealous of the people that are in your life. And then they also, they don't want you to be social and expansive because then your energy is going to somebody else, not them.
Oh my goodness. Interesting. So how long ago did you divorce this man? And are you fully healthy today with zero symptoms?
Yeah, so we started the proceedings in 2018. And as I mentioned, and you mentioned at the beginning of the show, it was about a year and a half long legal battle that he just dragged everything out. And this is very common. We came to an understanding that we would do a simple mediation. Well, this wasn't complicated. We weren't too entwined. It should have been a sit down with a mediator. Boom, it's over. We signed the papers, 60 days, I think it is, in the state of Texas, and done. We're done. That's my being naive to think that you can walk away from a narcissist and it be that easy. What it ended up being was this long drawn out battle because he hired an attorney that was like a bulldog attorney, and she just wanted to bash me. But fortunately, God aligned me with another woman that happened to be an attorney who's a light worker. She's amazing. And she said, you have really important things to do with your energy in the world, Kay. So let me take care of this ethically and you go do you and live life. So he did all that crazy. And I was completely protected from all of that. My attorney just cut me out of it. And she's like, here's papers that you sign. I need you to do this. So that I was able to focus on healing and moving on and rebuilding my life.
Yeah. And I mean, the reality is, that's what we do when we're dealing with something like that, is take care of ourselves. And the fact that all that external stress and BS that he was dragging you through or trying to, you could choose differently. And luckily you had the support. So that's incredible. Did you get any other support besides having the attorney? Like, did you help? What did you do for yourself to get well? Hey, I'm interrupting this podcast because I have something extra special just for you. Just in time for Valentine's Day, join me on Tuesday, February 13th at 6 p.m. Eastern for my Radical Self-Love Masterclass. This is a 1.5-hour interactive, fun, and empowering session live on Zoom. This masterclass is all about prioritizing you, because when you love yourself deeply and accept yourself, the whole world opens up to you in incredible ways. We're going to dive into what self-love really means, break through limiting beliefs holding you back, and create a foundation for success and fulfillment in all areas of your life. Bring your favorite snack and or drink, and let's celebrate you in a whole new way. Seats are not limited, but if you secure your spot now and head over to the show notes and sign up, you will receive a free gift. Let's get ready to make this Valentine's Day about the most important person in your life, and that is you. I can't wait to see you there. Back to the show.
Absolutely. So it was a matter of just really reuniting with the tribe that was in my life prior to meeting him, and really embracing what I call my sisterhood circle, right? Making sure that I had really supportive women in my life, getting really close to my family, which I've always been close to family, but it was a new level. And it was really kind of like this woman empowerment level that unfolded. I got together all of the matriarchs of our family,
Mm.
my senior elder women cousins, and we did a retreat together. And we just had this juicy connecting time of really enjoying the divine feminine and the fact that we were blood relationship as well. And
Oh,
then I said, this was so delicious. I would love, as part of the healing journeys that I do for women, create a sisterhood circle where other women could experience. So that is now a hallmark of the way that I work with women. They come into this virtual sisterhood healing circle so that they immediately can feel the magnification by connecting with other women that are also tapping into their power. Because when one of us taps into that power, that's powerful. But when multiple women are doing that simultaneously, it is crazy how fast we heal when
it's
we can be in
magic.
that kind of a space.
Yeah, I always
Isn't
say
it?
when women come together, magic happens. And even
Mm-hmm.
though I've been taught, or I was taught, to be jealous and compare and all that, the reality is it's quite the opposite. We need each other, and we create magic when we come together. It's powerful. So I love that. That's wonderful. So you had that support, you had a great attorney, and you now shifted your energy medicine practice to niche down to specifically helping narcissistic survivors, right? Or survivors of narcissism.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And while that was still a component of what I had did 15 years before, it was more under the umbrella of I have really highly sensitive individuals that are coming to me. When I looked back, I realized, oh, every single one of them were survivors of narcissistic abuse. And so
Um,
that was part of my own recovery to say, oh, the tools that I've really been teaching them, I need to really, in a very focused way, apply it to my own journey. And that's how I was also able to heal and immersing myself. I have amazing students. I ran a 3 years professional certification program. So I trained other healers and people in other healing arts like chiropractors and some physicians and doctors. So I aligned with them. I made sure to get in and get my chiropractic adjustments every week. My colleagues that were acupuncturists were needling me each week. I would go back and have healing sessions with my teachers who trained me in energy medicine. And so, really taking all of these different modalities, I have amazing colleagues that are psychotherapists. So, we worked with therapy and all of these other
oh,
aspects too.
plus.
Just making the joy of healing like painting, having all these colors on my palette, and joyously just partaking and immersing myself in all of these different things
That's
allowed me to really heal in a profound way. And I often say, healing is that lifetime art. We're always engaged in it. I don't ever feel like it's ever over, but it's also not a burden to feel like, oh no, when is it ever going to be over? A lot of the ladies say, I want an endpoint to this. And I said, we can make an endpoint to the suffering, but let us not make an endpoint to healing because we always need healing in our lives because healing is just growing. That's to me, the two are synonymous.
I
So
love
when we
that.
begin
I
to
agree.
change how we think about it,
Yeah,
right?
I
Yeah.
love that. I agree with that so much. Healing is growing. Absolutely. Tell us about what did you do before the energy medicine? What got you into energy medicine? And this is all many years before you met this man. Tell us about you
Yeah.
before that.
Oh my gosh. So I've had a really varied career. I started out my career as an educator. I was someone that studied cognitive science. So I was a special ed teacher and I was a writer for textbooks. So it's all about how do you optimize the way the brain works. And a lot of that time, I was integrating, and it was groundbreaking at the time back in the early 90s meditative and mindfulness techniques in order to help children's brains perform better. And I was also a math teacher too. I was given a group of children to work with that were underperforming, and the expectation from other teachers was these children, from the environment in which they came, they lived in a very rough neighborhood. There were drive-by gang shootings at night. The
Oh, no,
expectation for them was low. And I was like, no, I'm not going to come in here believing that they are any less capable of going to Harvard and Yale than any other child.
for you.
So guess what? We're going to take third grade math and turn it on its edge. I'm going to teach them algebra and do it with manipulatives and do it with breath work and do it with a way where they are tapping into the heart of themselves and the essential magic of who they are. If they know and they can feel their magic, they can do anything. And so I not only just taught the regular basics, but they actually did learn how to conquer first year algebra by the time they left third grade. So that proved, hey, these kids can do anything. And I was really challenging other teachers to increase. But I had a back injury. Linda, I had a back injury during those days, and I couldn't continue the position because there was some physical work that was involved. So I got into writing and into the high-tech field, and I ran my own company, web design company, for many years in Silicon Valley. And while I was doing web development work, my clients were healers. They were acupuncturists and energy medicine specialists. And they noticed when I would come into the space to interview them about what type of a website did they want and what kind of copy did they want on their website, that I was utterly fascinated by what they did. So they encouraged me to go back to school. And that's how I got into energy medicine. And my passion just exploded across many different levels. And just the early stages, I was actually testing out protocols of energy medicine with animals. So I was working very closely with veterinarians and people that were involved with emergency animal veterinarian medicine. And so by the time I finished my formal training, I was not only highly skilled as an energy animal healer, but then also with working with humans too. Because when you work with animals, you have to really learn the delicacy and nuances of energy medicine because they're so sensitive. So they were amazing teachers for me in being able to come into my practice that has become what Aiki Healing is today, one that really caters to this personal journey and making sure that everything is individualized because we're all so different in how we move through our healing.
I love all that. That's incredible. So you must have been a little bit into, like, if you were working with the third graders with the breath work, you must have had a little bit of, you were into the holistic natural health. And for the past 2 years, I've brought you inspiring stories and powerful insights to help you create a life and business you love living. But did you know that I also offer personalized coaching and dynamic workshops? If you're ready to move beyond dreaming and start building a life and business that truly lights you up, I'm here to help. Join me for transformative one-on-one coaching or dive into some vision workshops. Let's make your vision a reality and your life an adventure. Subscribe to the podcast for more and go to my website, lindabraincoach.com.
Absolutely. I was raised between Asia, Japan, Okinawa, Japan, and the US. And my father was a world-class martial artist. He taught me a lot about breath and even the acupressure points as a child. He was American. My mom is Japanese. And so I had a grandmother who was always doing shiatsu on me and talking about meridians and the energy points and all of that. So I grew up immersed in that. So by the time I went to school and studied it formally, it was like child's play. It was like coming home in a way. And it was so thrilling because my days were this in front of the computer as a programmer, developer, and disconnected really from energy. So to be able to go to a school where that was the language and the talk, I felt like I was just returning home. It was so amazing.
That is amazing. Oh my gosh. Where did you go to school for that, the energy healing?
I studied at the Longevity Institute with Dr. Arnold Tayam, and he was at the time one of the head instructors for Stanford's Integrative Medicine Department. They were looking at the effects of medical Qigong, the process of IVF and fertility, and how medical Qigong could enhance that process. But he was also highly involved with their oncology program, looking at how when you integrate principles of energetic healing through simple breath work and movements, that it enhanced the effect of chemotherapy. So a good portion of my practice was focused on two things: nephrology, healing the kidneys, and oncology, healing cancer. Wow. And so a lot of the women that come to me, when we say that the body truly does hold the story and it remembers, many of them have been diagnosed with stage 4 or 5 cancer, often in stages of metastatic cancer, and they've worked with oncologists, but what they have found is that it keeps coming back. And so, and this story's on my website too. One of my clients, the third time that it came back, her doctor said, you have about a year, maybe a year and a half to live. And so she came to me and she said, Kay, what do we do? And I said, it's time for us to go to a DNA level in your healing.
Yeah.
And I have the tools to help you to get there. And that was back in 2018, Linda. She's been cancer-free for 6 years.
Yeah.
Living a life, restoring her business. I went to visit her. Her and her husband just built a new home. This has been a dream home. And every time she went to build this home, by the way, her cancer would flare. So she was terrified when they were doing this build. She's like, is this going to be another time where the stress of it brings the cancer out again? They made it through the build. It's wonderful. There is so much love in that house. You walk in and you can feel the power of her journey and the triumph over this illness. And we made a commitment to each other that cancer will not come back. And every time we get together, she just laughs and she goes, I'm still here. I'm like, right? You're still here.
Oh yeah. I'm a firm believer in the body and the emotions affecting the body. Do you use any EFT, emotional freedom technique in your healing?
So acupressure and medical Qigong is the greater art from where EFT as a subsetting comes from that.
Right.
So the way that we do EFT, we've taken what the world knows as EFT and we've deepened it, because EFT taps on what we call the primary energy meridians. Those govern our physicality and our emotions. Okay, there's a DNA level of meridians that EFT doesn't even begin to touch. And that's what we integrate. So women are able to have these really dramatic quantum leaps and changes when we talk about a DNA level of change that is not possible with just using EFT in its pure format, the way that it's often taught. Wow. So ladies often say, hey, this is EFT on steroids, Kay. And I'm like, isn't it? And we also integrate more than tapping, because here's the thing about tapping. I think the system is great, not that there's anything wrong with tapping, but here's the thing. When your nervous system is hypervigilant, it's already running at its highest point. And then you introduce in more stimuli by doing these things. Oftentimes, anxiety will rise, and oftentimes that state of hypervigilance will rise. You may get a temporary dopamine boost and release, but then what I've heard from women over time that are highly traumatized, it's not for everybody, I'm talking about a really specific subset, that they can get aggravated by that. I had one lady when I was demonstrating a certain tapping routine who said, I am just getting so hyperstimulated at this moment and triggered, Kay. Why is that? And I said, so for you, the taps are not what your body is needing and what your energy is needing. So let's alter that. So we do a lot of things like starting the taps and then coming into circular motions and just brushing and releasing. There's more that you can do on both that primary and DNA level through a gentle brush like this versus the tapping. So that's what I mean, that we take EFT and put it on steroids to really customize it.
Love that. Love that. So let's do a couple more questions and then we'll share how people can find you, because I am so amazed. I know we could talk for hours because you're the kind of person and you are a wealth of information here. Tell us about your personal spiritual morning practice or Qigong practice, or how do you support yourself on a daily basis?
Definitely. Well, at this stage, and one of the things is I used to teach professional, I taught a professional certification program. So Qigong is, for me, just the way that I move. Everything is meditation for me. I don't necessarily do a standalone. And that is what I teach women, because sometimes that idea that you have to have a set routine and it must look like this or that can be overwhelming. Right. So I always say to women, meditation is anything that allows you to drop into a certain brainwave frequency. And so if that for you, like me in the mornings, is washing dishes and feeling the warm soap and being fully present and noticing my breath, and you can even hear it in my voice that my brain is already shifting, just going back there in my mind with my beautiful aromatherapy soap and feeling the smoothness of the ceramic of my dishes, that can be meditation.
Okay.
Right. So it's really allowing myself to get into that brain set,
So
that
whatever
mindset.
feels good for you, kind of. You're not so
Absolutely.
rigid with, okay, I have to meditate for 10 minutes. I have to do affirmations. I have to write in my journal. I have to read or pray. You have like just flow pretty much what feels good to you that's going to support you in connecting to source and to connecting to yourself.
Exactly. And I may do just a 5-minute qigong. We call it bagua walking. It looks like Tai Chi. I may be doing a 5-minute laying down and actually listening to one of my own resets where I am consciously connecting in with the energy pathways. And there's that idea that the meditation doesn't have to be a 30-minute block. When you do a reset that's energetic and you're resetting your brain, body, mind, and soul, it can be 5 minutes and that fuels you until your next break. And so when we sprinkle these 5 minutes throughout our day, if you do them 5 minutes every hour, at the end of an 8-hour day, you've done 40 minutes of
Yeah.
very deep mindfulness work,
Yeah.
all in chunk-sized pieces that you can achieve. And that's really the key, that it has to be natural. We let go of all rigidity because, gosh, that gets exhausting. Now I
Yeah.
got to do my prayers.
Yeah.
That just gets exhausting.
Yeah, no, I've lightened up too with my mornings. I used to have, more of a routine, but one of my guests, she was saying she used to as well, and she said it was very masculine. And I never thought of it that way, but it is because it's all these actions that it is kind of a masculine energy. But the reality is, I like that where you don't have an extra pressure. Oh, I have to do all these things in the morning. It's more like what feels good to me right now. Maybe, I always say thank you, God, for a new day. As soon as I wake up in the bed, still is what I say. And then a couple other things. And then, do I want to read? Do I want to tap? Do I want to, you know, um, meditate, whatever feels. And then I end up in the dishes too, somehow. So you and I have that in
I love it.
I know we do. We have that in common. And we also have the teaching. I substitute taught here. And it's funny, your comment, I just to go back about how they were saying that the kids were a certain way, because I had the teacher saying to me through text, she was saying something about their level of like that they weren't, she was saying something about them not being, I don't know what the word, but it was almost like smart. And I know that they were very smart kids. It's just they weren't taught these skills, but they were very smart children. Like you could tell, when kids are smart, right? And
Right.
so I love that you just did not allow what someone else said about those kids. Good for you. I love that. Um, so what else would you like to share? I know you have a free gift for everyone, right? You have the 5-minute reset, right? Is that free or?
5-minute resets. The 3-minute reset actually is even more powerful, and that is on the website. So if they go there, and it'll be in your show notes to aikihealing.com, they can absolutely get into that 3-minute healing. And there's a secret. It leads you into 2 other healings that you absolutely will enjoy. But also, Linda, I wanted to let your audience know that on February the 9th, Sunday at noon Central Standard Time, I am offering a complete 1 hour free healing session in Zoom. So they can definitely find that information on the website too. There's also a link in the show notes that they can come in to begin to experience the system of the 5 energy resets and have an opportunity to ask questions and discover also what foods can help to reset those tanks, as well as what specific herbs act as natural antidepressants and anti-anxiety remedies. So those are all available for your guests to come into, and I can't wait to connect with them.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much. One other question that came to mind when you were speaking about your animal energy healing. I happen to know someone here who was trained in that as well. But are you vegetarian or vegan or any? I'm just curious.
I eat everything in moderation, is what I say. I have no limitations, restrictions. Predominantly plant based is what I lean on and my body enjoys. But I am that person. If someone has a grass fed steak and it's responsibly raised and the energy feels okay, I have no problem of partaking it. So I just try to really be balanced in all the different areas.
Yeah, balance is key for sure. I agree. I agree because no rigidity, right?
That's it. That's
Yeah.
it. The Dalai Lama even said that once, he's one of my most powerful teachers too, in Buddhist, being vegetarian most of the time. And he said, oh, but this host prepared this for me. So I have to think about what was the energy around this particular offering that has meat in it. And what would be the sole consequence of just being so rigid that I cannot accept the love that was imbued in this? So
Mm.
I loved that he stressed that idea of soulful flexibility.
I love that too. I had a guest, she was also plant-based, but she said if I go somewhere and they're serving something that has meat and she will eat it. And that's interesting. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for this amazing conversation. I loved talking to you, Kay. You're a beautiful soul and you're such a light and you're helping so many people. And I'm so excited to share this. So is there any last words you'd
Ah,
like to share?
well, I am so grateful to you, Linda. It's just been an honor to share space with you. And I just want to leave your audience with this thought: be kind, be gentle to yourself because you deserve it.
Absolutely. No, thank you. And yeah, and I have my radical self-love workshop coming up very soon that I will be,
Yay!
the link is in the show notes as well. So excited. Thank you so much, Kay. I loved talking to you.
I'd love it as well, Linda. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Empowered the Podcast. I am truly grateful for your time and for being a part of this amazing community. If you found value in today's episode, please consider sharing it with someone you think would benefit from listening to it. Together, we can create a ripple effect of empowerment and healing across the planet. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you'll know when the next episode drops. And if you could be so kind, leaving a review would mean the world to me. Your feedback not only helps us grow, but also ensures that more people find this podcast and get the inspiration they need to transform their lives. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for being part of the movement to create a more empowered and abundant world. Until next time, live empowered.